Hey there, hope you're doing good. Companies have processes for various things. Should code be reviewed before it is committed? What happens before a launch? If an engineer wants to modify something that's already out there, what do we need to do? These processes, and when I say process, it need not be bureaucratic, it can be lightweight as well. These ways or methods of working are set taking into account what the company needs, what are the company's business goals. Maybe they need to launch faster, maybe they need to have fewer bugs, and so on. So, a process is designed to optimize these, right? And a process is always designed to optimize for some outcomes. For example, a pre flight checklist in an airport, in an airplane, is optimized to reduce accidents. It's not optimized to save time, right? And when engineers say optimized for something, it means it is tailored for something. It is adjusted so that that outcome is delivered and not others. So process is always optimized for something. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. And processes are optimized for company results. However, there is another equally important factor that needs to be taken into account, which is morale. Let me give you some examples of processes that are not optimized for morale. At one point in my job, I had an obsessive tech lead who took a month to approve my commit, to approve my pull request. He thought he was helping increase the quality of the code, but I felt completely frustrated and demotivated in that project and eventually about the company. Another engineer who works at a company told me that he made some change and he built something rather. He didn't use a framework for that, he just wrote raw code in the programming language which they use. In the review, one of the leads said we should use a framework. After a day, another lead piped in saying we don't need to for this use case, it doesn't help. And they got into an argument. And this stretched on for 2 weeks. And finally, both the leads, and I use the word lead in quote here, which you will see why in a second, ended at a stalemate. The first lead said, I am right, but I can't convince you yet. The second lead said, I am right, but I can't convince you yet. And no one made a decision as to what to do with this commit. The engineer was not unblocked. So one problem here is that the leads shirked their responsibility of unblocking people. The other problem was that the engineer felt demotivated. I asked him, without telling him that this process is bad or anything, I asked him, do you feel that this delay of 2 weeks was worth it to ensure that the code is good? He said, not at all. And he asked me, I'm just wondering, maybe it's premature to wonder, but should I move on? Because I'm not able to get work done in this company. Let me give you another example. Early in my career, I worked at a company where when I interviewed a candidate, I was supposed to give detailed feedback to the promotion committee. And I had to say things like, I asked him what is the time complexity of a hash map. And he said that it is order of n log n or whatever it is. These are the kind of detailed point by point, blow by blow feedback I had to give. I asked this, then he said that, then I asked that, then he said this, etc., etc. The rationale was that they wanted to hire scientifically to weed out individuals' biases and so on. Because humans can and do make mistakes. So they wanted everything to be double checked and so on, right? It's a very scientific approach. But I thought I'm not trusted anymore in this process, and I stopped caring. I'll do some interview, give some feedback, and not bother anymore. And in fact, many engineers didn't do enough interviews. So they instituted a mechanism where people who did, I think, 13 interviews in a quarter got a slight boost in their performance review score of 0.1, which was not actually that slight. It's a modest, but kind of, it's not so small that you would ignore it. It was a boost. And I and some others I found out ended up doing 13 interviews just to get the boost. Once we reached 13, I would reply to the recruiter saying, sorry, I have some urgent work in my project. Let's do it on the first, which would coincidentally be the next quarter. And I told this to my manager, and he said something like, yeah, you all have to be smart, or something like that. So now there are multiple dimensions to this. Leave aside the incentives argument, leave aside the big company versus small company argument. One of the things was I felt this process, I didn't identify with the process. My heart was not in it. That is why all this happened. So here, if you look at these few examples, my code review taking a month, the engineer being blocked in a stalemate because of the code review process, and the detailed feedback expected from an interview making me feel like the company didn't trust me, and I reciprocated. People always reciprocate these things. Make them feel trusted, empower them, they'll reciprocate. Make them feel untrusted, like, oh man, you may screw things up, let's ensure. They will reciprocate in their attitude towards the company. And this happened because these processes were optimized for an outcome, forgetting the human equation. The same process may work very well if you have robots executing it, I don't know. But when you have humans, you need to take morale into account. Any process that doesn't take morale into account will fail. So now that we explored a few problems, let me give you a few solutions to increase morale. The first is default permit. When you're not sure, say yes. When I was running my startup, engineers would ask me, can I do X at times? And sometimes I didn't have an opinion. And sometimes I said yes anyway to empower them. Default permit. Say no only for specific things that you know are problems. For example, if someone says, can I launch without doing any QA at all? Maybe the answer is no. Except in such specific cases, say yes. The second point to optimize for morale is to create a calm rather than stressed environment. Too many business leaders make it seem like a treadmill. They always put pressure. They say the project is running behind schedule, and they play all these tricks. They'll say, for example, if you say something takes 2 months, they'll say, it's kind of really urgent and this and that. Can we do it in a month? And then a month and a week later, they'll say, why is this project running behind schedule? They make people feel they're always running behind schedule or inadequate or things like this, right? This will create a very stressed, like pressure cooker kind of environment, and the good engineers will leave, or they'll stay and not bother. I know one engineer in the aforementioned company he would just ignore the founder's messages saying it's delayed. When asked later why is it delayed, he would say it's not delayed. I gave you an estimate of 2 months. It's not 2 months are not over. So he would play these games back to the founder. And when you do this, morale is affected if people feel that they have to play a game to protect themselves. Another example of the first point was default to saying yes. Second point was create a calm rather than stressed environment. Third point is create a positive engineering culture. Help people grow. Identify their career goals. Challenge them. Maybe conduct a tech talk once in a while, including on a topic not related to work. Don't make it seem like a sweatshop. Another thing about morale is to optimize or balance between positive and negative feedback. One of the engineers who used to work with me worked at another company, and he felt demotivated. He said, whenever I make a mistake, my boss attacks me, and whenever I do something good, he doesn't um, praise me. So I get only attacks, criticism, finger pointing, etc. His boss felt, hey, we are all professionals. We are all like, he kind of took it for granted. He didn't feel the need to constantly encourage people. Because he came from Google, where a positive emotional environment is assumed. Everyone is respected, everyone kind of feels secure. No, nobody is questioned personally. It's a positive, very positive, very supportive environment. But when you have different people coming from different environments into another company which is not Google, they may not assume that. In fact, they may have had a negative environment in their past. So you need to create that positive environment. Even Google ended up with that positive environment because someone created it. So this engineer told me, Karthik, when I used to work with you and I did something great, you were really enthused. I could see it in your face. In fact, on one occasion, you walked to each desk and showed the person how nice it is, what I've built. That single thing is enough to keep me going for a quarter. That single motivation. I don't need daily motivation. So, the bottom line is, if you have a process, you need to look at it not just logically, like what are the pros and cons and what are the risks, what are the outcomes, what do we want to trade off for something else, but also emotionally. If I'm on the other end of this process, how will I feel? If I'm the one subjected to this process, if I'm the one whose work is blocked or my project is cancelled based on this process, how will I feel? Optimize for that. The highest priority is to make people feel connected. In fact, statistics say that majority of people are disconnected from their workplaces. Emotionally, they don't care, they don't give a shit. And do you think a company will run optimally in this condition? No. So anyway, the point is, when you set up a process, optimize for morale. Consider that they're humans. Every decision you make, okay, if this happens, we need to handle it this way. Ask yourself, how would I feel if I'm subjected to this process? And optimize for morale. Thank you.